So, I've got a whole lot of bits, and today I'm going to take you through kind of how I organise and store them, because I figured some newer people might find benefit in that. So let's grab the big bag of bits out of the way, out of the bag, and let's get started. So, first off, and probably most useful, I've got a large tray to, or in this case, bits contain a lid, to stick the actual bits in, and I've got Ziploc bags to organise things into. These are really useful for sorting out bits. Now, you can see the mountain of stuff that we've got here. So we've got a mountain of stuff here. It's relatively easy to work out. So I'm going to stick it to the side and and grab some of the easier bits out first. So the first pile I've set up there is a terrain bits pile, and then I've set a Solar Auxilia and vehicle bits pile. Next a Necron bits pile, and an Age of Sigmar or Warhammer Fantasy pile. Then a gun barrels pile, and Solar Auxilia pile, Gene Stealer pile, some Necron bits that got moved over. I've attempted to match up barrels and such where possible, not always possible. This was a random bits lot. You can see the collection, and there's so much here that I've had to keep moving the camera around. Unfortunately, my tripod is kind of broken and doesn't want to stay upright any longer, stay up high anymore. Next up the top, I'm setting up a guard bits box. I also set up separate, well, not bits box, but I've set up some separate spots up in the top center. There's a las cannons and barrels section. I've set up Imperial Guard bits, Space Marine section, going through and further moving things into places they belong. We've got a lot of Warhammer Fantasy bits, including plenty of Bretonian stuff, which will be useful. We've got gradual declining through the bits as I find more bits and sort things out. Now there's a pile off to the side of Chaos Space of Heresy bits and Chaos Space Marine bits. And just keeping going through, I end up setting up a small pile of Sister of Battle bits because I end up finding some. I wasn't expecting there to be Sisters of Battle in this lot, but there was more in this lot than I expected. Got some weapon bits and starting to get some bags together. That's a Space Marine bits bag. We've got guard weapon bits for Solar Auxilia. We've got Solar Auxilia crew bag being set up. Got Warhammer Fantasy stuff being set up, and the Gene Stealer Cult bit ended up in there by mistake. Now I stick a Bretonian banner aside with the Sister of Battle stuff because that's probably where it's going to be more useful to me. I keep the Warhammer Fantasy Ogre to the side because that's getting used later. Now, there are timestamps in the description of this video. Now, the plastic tub there was a terrain tub, so I stuck the terrain bits in it. Got a bag for the Necron bits. We've got the barrels being put aside because those are getting used in a Medusa project. I think I'm one short for actually making, not a Medusa, a Minotaur project. And I think I'm one short for doing a whole battery's worth. But if you want to see that, why not hit subscribe? Or better yet, donate me a Dracosan. I need 3 of them. But yeah, this was a huge collection of bits that I scored off eBay. And while I went for the next lot that the seller had to try and find the end barrels for las cannons that were missing the second side of their barrels in this collection, sadly I didn't win. Now here we are, me grabbing out guard bits and sorting things out a bit. Sadly, there weren't enough Cadian bits to actually build up even a couple of Cadian guardsmen. There were enough bits to build up a couple of catachan though, so you're about to see that in a moment. got me going through and sorting things out. Now grabbing that dripping was to make sure that there was actually liquid. Now I'm putting down gluing them all together. Catachans go together interestingly. Now I realise there's a few Age of Sigmar or Warhammer Fantasy legs that have got mixed in. But oh well. Not everyone's going to shout at guardsmen for being out of uniform. I'm sure a commissar will, but commissars have a short lifespan in a catachan army. Next, I have me building up another one, using what bits I can find in there. Sadly, I don't have any more right hands for these. Plenty of left hands, though. Even found a few heads amongst my other bits collection. So the individual bags of bits are going to get put into individual boxes for factions. Now the Solar Auxilia one is going to end up in the Guard faction because they share parts. The Sister of Battle one is going to go to the Sisters of Battle. The Necron one is probably going to end up going to a Necron player, I know. The Vehicle Bits one will probably go into the Guard one. Now I've got the bag set up there for a moment just because I'm packing everything down. Now keeping that aside because let's get on with making an ogryn bodyguard. Grabbing the ogryn kit here and grabbing some spare bits out of it. Now there are a few more bits than I actually show on camera there. Taking out his big belly plate mount and smoothing down the tops of his pants a bit because he's in the Guard. He's going to have a bit better waistband than that. Now I'm making use of the Norm Dead Dog parts, but with the icon shaved down because I'll put transfers where that icon on the side of his gun is. Now I'm making use of superglue and bicarb as a gap filler because it actually does work really well as a gap filler. I put in a bit of plastic in the centre and then fill his gut with bicarb. You could say I gave him a gutful. Then you see me coming through and attaching him onto a base because that'll make him easier to work with. I pull out milliput and get started on actually building up a shape. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have used green stuff, and I'm going fast because this took ages, even if it doesn't look like it. The footage is sped up quite a lot because things took ages to do and I did a good chunk of the work here on camera, up until the plasticard work, which I did after it had dried. Now you see me coming in and trying to start pushing in the shape of the Guard uniform. At the moment it still looks a bit like a dress, and it kind of will until I get in and start shaping things. Now starting to add in the sleeves because I'm inspired. This one's kind of flak jacket uniform is inspired off Cadian's, but a much cruder version. Coming through and just adding more. Now I keep leaning off to the side of the camera, unfortunately, because I've not got the ability to have the camera just aimed straight down on top of my workspace yet. Coming in with a shaping tool to push in seams and some creases. I probably could have put in more. I put in a detail at the base, making use of a pointy spike tool that looks like an owl for dressmaking. Add in some plastic art on top of the plastic, struggling to get it to actually cut straight. The surface I was cutting it on wanted to move, and the plastic art wanted to move. You see me just adding in more texture details in and just refining them a bit. Coming in, adding in more base plate and shaping it up to make it kind of look vaguely reminiscent of Cadian armor. I probably should have added a lot more plastic art. Working out the shaping of the lower plate. Sticking that in. Adding in, now sculpting on the shoulder pads on there. Now I will come in after they've dried and refine the shape with a knife and a file a little bit. But in future I might just make pauldron mold. Yeah, you see me coming in here and further refining in, adding in a bit more plasticard in and pushing that in. Now I bent some plasticard into a thing so as to have a waistband, then attached on a head and sculpted in a bit of a collar for him. Now, off camera, I sculpted some hair for this guy, making use of some extra liquid green stuff that I used to actually gap fill some of the spots and smooth out some of the details. Now, I've gone and head off camera and made some of the straps that are going to have his armor, connect up his armor a bit. And you see me bending in and attaching a plate on here after I connect up that band a bit and make him look like he's wearing a safety jacket. That needed a bit of bending, and then I stick on a tank pack. This is a collection of backpacks that's attached on a guard tank. And I just figure it looked good as a backpack. I attach on an Aquila and do a bit of cleanup and work on him, and he is done and ready for painting. And yeah, I go ham, and you'll see in a moment. Now, onto some Solar Auxilia. So, I started, after I had the gunner left over from building a Malkador last year, the process of building up a squad from leftovers, and I didn't expect this collection of bits would actually be as useful as it is. It ended up actually giving me 4 bodies. Didn't quite give me enough heads, but of course I had to make use of some spare bits from the fantasy and catachan bag to actually give them some legs, and as a result they're kind of a bit mismatched, but that kind of adds to it, I think, because the way I'm kind of picturing these mentally is these are survivors of a long drawn out conflict where there hasn't been proper supply lines and they've ended up having to adapt and improvise and gather parts. Now I've also working out the legs and getting things to fit and not look completely out of place was a bit hard, and they might still look a bit out of place even after being painted. But yeah, going through the catachan parts and finding legs and then finding the arms. So I had a few ideas as I was working on these, and as I went along I actually had a look at the rules for the Valataris Storm selection, and because between this bag and a Space Marine or Legiones Astartes Scorpius missile tank I got last year, I had a couple of Volkites aside. Now unfortunately I was missing a part from the Volkite here, but a little bit of creative use of green stuff and a press mold which has since been melted back down and used for something else once I no longer needed it, so as to actually make the complete weapon. Now I'm still going through actually building these guys because it took me a while to actually get them to vaguely sit right, and I end up having to go to town on the bases, adding a whole lot of muck and stuff and making them. The basing texture is actually structural. It helps them stay upright, as you'll see in a moment when I actually get up to that point. But just getting the legs to match up with the bodies was a bit of a task. Next you see me coming in and cleaning up and attaching the front plates for the chests, attaching in the heads, and attaching in arms and making a pose. Now this first one's going to be holding his Volkite, and I had to adjust his left arm's hose to make it actually sit comfortably on him. Next you see me continuing on there, and I grabbed a catachan hand and attached it in, then attached in the Volkite onto him, and attached him onto the base. Now I had to make use of the bicarb here to get him to stay upright, and proceeded to just do the basing texture at that step, making use of a mixture of bicarb and chunks of sprue. Next I completed up the Volkite for him, filled in a hole in it, and trimmed off a detail that I attached elsewhere onto it. Next we move on to the next one, and keep sorting it out. Now the pose for these is a bit wacky. Now I had to modify the base of it to make him actually fit the weapon in, and filled a hole in the weapon using a piece of plastic card tube. Then sorted out the hand from the catachan so that he had a hand, because I wanted these to, even though I've only got enough Volkite to give these two models a ranged weapon, I wanted to make sure that the whole squad has both hands and are ready to have weapons go in them and be, when I get more, because I'll probably end up with more rhinos eventually. I don't know how many more. I can picture at least 2 more for use in Sisters of Battle, and if I can score some Volkite off Space Marine players, I will. Or off Legion players, I will. You see me coming in here and just working on the base, and then starting on the next one and getting him together. Yeah, Solar Auxilia are an interesting thing, or a bit of an oddity to me. When they first happened, I initially rejected them, because my main exposure to Horus Heresy was the old Collected Visions of Heresy book, and because these were newer than that, I was like, the heck are these? And then, I gradually grew to like the design of them, and like the idea of mere mortals fighting Space Marines. What I don't like is the lack of, directly good against power armor options the infantry have. Like, Space Marines get all these options, Legionis get all these options for, there's 5 different weapon packs of just special and heavy weapons for them. And then you look at these guys, and what do they got? Valataris, with either the option for axes or Volkite charges. And I'm looking at it going, these guys stand a chance? Like, come on, give us a plasma gun squad, give us a missile launcher squad. Like, if there's one thing that I'd like for these guys to get, it's more options. Now, that's probably going to happen in future, but I don't think it'll be to the same degree. It definitely won't be to the same degree as Legionis. I'm grabbing bits of trash out of the offcuts and shavings tub and bicarb, and we have them built. And so we've got them built up, and they're certainly dynamically posed. Now here is the one that I built last year to go with them. Well, that actually started the whole idea off. I'll just put him in the center. Now I do need 2 more Volkite charges for this squad, but yeah, we've got some slightly dynamic troopers. I'll do a group shot of everyone at the end of the video in kind of line formation. But yeah, we've got these decent troops. I look forward to getting more Volkite charges for them. So we've got the ogre and bodyguard. Now I went with the Norm Deadog loadout for it instead of something more dramatic, mainly due to a lack of parts. My Bulgarian kits have been built up with the Maulin shield, and I'm not bothered trying to buy both those parts off eBay. Now I could probably scratch build the parts, but yeah. So I went ham on the transfers. I wanted to have the skull and heart icon to indicate that it is a regimental bodyguard, that is a bodyguard for a character. And I figured given the size of the armor plates, it would benefit from extra winged Aquillas or winged skulls. The H being an icon for hectare, because there is not a transfer sheet for my regiment yet. I haven't been bothered to try and figure one out. But yeah, the catachan I think worked. I'm not sure if I'll paint an entire army quite like that, but I would like to add some catachan later in the year, especially since the leftovers from this, once I've got the parts, will work great as the base for a what's it called? Field ordnance batteries. I've got leftover weapons from 2 squads of those, so setting up some catachan fobs would be decent, and it would potentially get the heavy las cannon and whatever the name of that multi-rocket launcher thing is out of the way. So in terms of scale, here's how he scales with a normal ogryn or normal boogryn. He's kind of slightly shorter, and on the subject of shorter, let's put him next to someone who's huge. The ogryn commissar from the other year. And here he is with the ogryn commissar that I did a few years back. In terms of scale, you can kind of see that even with, he's about the same, he's not quite the same height, even with the exception of, the base being taller, but he still works. And if I build another one, I might well put a whole lot of icons on it, and maybe even a rattling spotter or something. A rattling just sitting on a crow's nest on top of it with a pair of binoculars could be funny. That requires me to score singles of the Warhammer Ogre again. So let's get these together in a lineup, and I'll share, and you'll get to see what they all look like together. Okay, and that's all of them together. Now I've got the 2 without their weapons at the back, and while I realise I could have put the bayonet on the end of his weapon, I kind of like him without it on there. I mean, he's got a huge knife as it is. But yeah. So what do you reckon of these? Would you have done something different with these parts? I'd love to hear. That is, if you're still watching. Statistically, most people have clicked off the video by this point. If you're still watching by this point, please leave a comment and let me know what your favourite colour is. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. There'll be more content soon. I've just seen that I've hit 412 subscribers, and one of my favourite Imperial Guard commanders commands a regiment with that number.